Hi there, Josh. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I normally start with pretty much the same question, and that's what are the musical projects you're working on at the moment?
I got a few things going on at the moment. Because I kind of wear multiple hats a lot of the times. I do my own stuff, of course, as an artist. I work as a sideman, with different artists, and then I produce a lot of records, both on my own and in tandem with Joe Bonamassa. We produce a lot of records together. So I've got all of those things going on. I've got some records I'm producing on my own. The main one is we're in the middle of a new record for Andy Timmons that I'm producing, one of my friends and heroes. So that's the second album for him that I'm producing. That'll be out next year, probably beginning of the year. Um, Joe and I have some records coming up in the next few months that we're producing that I can't say who they are, but are pretty cool. And then I have tours coming up with Joe as a sideman, and I'm working on booking some of my first tours in a while, starting next year. Because since COVID, it's been really hard for me to get back on the road on my own. I've just been so busy with production work and on stuff with Joe that I haven't toured on my own in years now. So I'm starting to get that going again next year, and I'll probably release a new record of my own as well.
And can you give a little bit of background about how you got into playing guitar?
Sure. I started playing guitar when I was 6. I received my first guitar from my parents on my third birthday. It was just a fluke, really. They're not musicians. They just love music, and they brought home this little, student size acoustic guitar for me to play. And I banged it around for a couple years. And when I was 6, I mean, this is what they tell me, but when I was 6, I asked for lessons and started taking lessons at 6, and I took lessons for years, like from 6 till 13, I think. And by 13, I was pretty good, and I was playing a lot of gigs already. And that's when I got busy enough to stop. I was kind of stopped taking lessons because I was working a lot. I know that sounds funny, but it's the truth.
So you're essentially professional at 13.
Oh yeah, for sure. I started playing gigs when I was 12, and at 13, like every weekend during school and every holiday break and all that stuff was full with gigs. Yeah.
So although you're really known as a blues guitarist, you have a really wide stylistic palette in terms of sort of your harmonic vocabulary and the different stylistic things you can do. How did that come about?
I mean, I struggled with that when I was younger because I always loved all forms of music, but I considered myself a blues guy. And with blues, there's a weird stigma and like this barrier that gets thrown up by blues musicians where if you expand too much or learn too much or do this or that, you're not really a blues guy anymore, or you're not playing the blues for real. And so at first, when I was young, I kind of was like that. I was like, oh, I don't want to learn that jazz shit. I don't want to do this or that because it'll mess up my blues playing. I'm a blues musician. And it took like, obviously just evolution and growth and growing up, but also like hearing some guys who I really respected their blues playing being deeper and realizing it was okay. So like hearing Robin Ford and Larry Carlton and guys like that, who, especially Robin, like when I was a kid, I didn't get Robin. He was too slick and knew too much for me and didn't bend notes enough. Wasn't aggressive enough for me. And then as I got a little bit older into my teenage years, it became clear I heard him play uh, more blues, like play with, when he was young, he played with Charlie Musselwhite and Jimmy Witherspoon and straight blues. And I was like, no, wait a minute. This guy loves the blues as a student of the blues, and it's possible to do that and continue to grow as a musician. You're not dishonoring the blues or whatever. And that was important for me to kind of get over that barrier and open the doors. And then once that wall came down, then it was like, oh, all that Charlie Parker that I kind of listened to and messing around with, I'm gonna start bringing that in, and all this and all that, I'm gonna start bringing it all in, and that's what I did. And then it was kind of similar, same way I found Danny Gatton. And he wasn't playing jazz, although he did play a lot of jazz, but he was mixing all of this technique and harmonic ability into whatever he played. He wasn't a blues player by any means, but he was in this like free zone where he could play whatever he thought whenever he wanted to. He didn't care about what you thought. He was playing from here and from here. If he thought it, he played it. And again, it was like, wait a minute, this is okay. Like, try to become the best you can be. And as long as you're playing it like honestly and because you mean it, you can play anything anytime.
I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit there, that it's actually the blues is kind of more about the feel and almost doesn't matter as much about whether you're using a specific set of notes or not. It's how you deliver it.
100%. It's about how you deliver it, where you're coming from. Are you getting your point across? Like blues is about, yeah, feeling, inflection, timing, phrasing, not necessarily so much the notes. It's the feeling you're trying to impart. It's how you're feeling and you're trying to portray that for the listener, and you can do that with any set of notes.
Do you also listen to other instruments for inspiration, or is it just guitar?
I know a lot, especially saxophone and trumpet players, especially horn, and singers too. Like a lot of, I'll listen back to my playing over the years as I come down, and I can pinpoint licks that are or ideas that were 100%, Freddie Hubbard or Lee Morgan or Coltrane or Charlie, especially Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker was massive, still is massive, but also like I'll hear things in my vibrato or the way, especially the way that I'll come off of a lick. Like I have a lot of ways that I end phrases, and those all come from singers. Like I hear like very clearly, oh, I end my phrase the way Sam Cooke ends a phrase, or Ray Charles ends a phrase, or Bobby Bland ends a phrase, because those nobody is as expressive as a singer, and they end, especially the way they end phrases, like just bring things to a close. I get a lot of that from singers.
Have you got any specific techniques that you're working on at the moment, guitar wise?
Techniques, not as much techniques as more ideas, and I learn things, I guess, like twofold. So sometimes it's technique driven and sometimes it's harmonically driven by trying to figure out what's that I just heard and why does that work there and why does it invoke this feeling in me, like so right now I'm mostly working on things that I felt like I neglected as a kid, um, which is mostly harmonic stuff, and it's not necessarily have anything to do with my soloing or improvising. It's more like building up my harmony chops when it just comes to knowledge, because I'm doing so much arranging these days and just making myself more knowledgeable and better about fleshing out harmony.
So a lot of it's more about maybe working on your sort of inner ear and your sort of vocabulary rather than sort of technical things now.
It's my ear, and it is some forms technical, but not technical in music theory. You know what I mean? Like just fleshing out. I was, fortunate, I guess, to have been born with a good ear, and I've always had a good ear. And so when I hear something, I can normally, pick up the guitar and quickly figure out what's going on there without necessarily knowing what's going on there technically, So I've been trying to go back and make sure now that I do know much more musically, just as far as terminology and things theory wise, trying to put a name to some of the things that I've done for so many years that I maybe didn't know. Because there was a weird point of confluence where I split. I had been taking lessons and I had learned to read pretty well and was working on my theory and all that. And then I started working so much that reading just disappeared. You know what I mean? I didn't have to read ever. And then I came out here to LA and I started doing sessions, and I didn't really have to ever read for that either. I was reading chord charts, but not, reading lead lines and things like that. And so, yeah, I feel like I skipped a large part of where I would have nailed that stuff down. So little by little, I'm trying to refresh that stuff.
Did you still find sort of learning to read useful though, from a sort of a standpoint of kind of understanding music overall?
Oh yeah. I especially, it's much more important for me now as a producer. When I'm standing, behind the console looking out the window, and I've got an orchestra of 30 people out there, and I'm reading a score, that maybe I can't read it perfectly, but I can certainly look at the violin part and go, hey, this is da ba da da ba ba. You know what I mean? Maybe just even rhythmically that I can see that's the way that's supposed to be phrased. I need to be able to do that, to look out there and follow along and say something if something sounds wrong to me, or isn't coming across the way. So yeah, I've needed to brush up, especially on reading notation rhythmically, so that I can follow along with a horn section or orchestra or things like that. Because yeah, those things come into play much more frequently for me now.
Yeah, I mean, just going, we need to go back to bar 34,
Exactly.
just being able to communicate with the musicians.
Exactly. Those type of things where I used to would not have been comfortable to say to the orchestra master and to the engineer, like, hey, I need to punch in here on the and of four in bar 32. You know what I mean? Whatever. Yeah.
So, and you said that obviously you reading was useful for when you session work with chord charts and things like that, but you didn't really do any particular like lead line reading or anything like that. Was it more a creative job then when you were working on sessions?
100%. And there's a divide here in LA between movie and music sessions, and I mean movie and television sessions, and then music, like record sessions. Movies, you have to read perfectly all the time. They're not looking for your creativity most of the time. Sometimes you'll get hired to come in and be a soloist. That's different. But if you're getting hired, like in the movie orchestra part, like to come in, they're expecting you to read down this book perfectly first take. Don't really care what your tone sounds like. Don't really care if you can impart any genius into this thing or not. It's about time and money and perfect, being perfect. And when I first moved here, I actually got hired on a couple sessions like that through recommendations, and I was over my head. Like I'm not that kind of a reader, you know what I mean? And it was scary, like to see how good some of these guys read. But also, it was freeing in a bit to I allowed myself to realize like limitations aren't always necessarily a bad thing. They're just choices. And it was like, wait a minute, I don't really want to be that guy. So it's okay that I can't just do that perfectly. I excel at this other thing because actually then I would see some other musicians who were really great in that side come over to this side and try to take a solo on a simple 1/4 vamp or whatever, and it'd be like, that's kind of not very happening because that's not their world and they don't live in that world where they're improvising and soloing, doing things. It's like, well, I have my skills, they have their skills, we all have our own skills, and that's okay. So yeah, when I would go out on record sessions, it's more about being creative. They sometimes stick a chart down in front of you, sometimes there's no chart. Sometimes you write your own chart, you listen to the demo, and you know, uh, sometimes you could be in depth, sometimes you're not. It's more about like when you're listening to the demo or to the artist strum it for you or play it for you, whatever, and you're writing down the arrangement, automatically coming up with an idea. Whether it's bad or good doesn't matter, but getting one as quick as you can so you have some idea of when you pick up your guitar, I know what I'm going to do first. They may not like it, but I got an idea. Maybe I think it's good. That's the most important thing when you're in that world. And also listening to the artist and the producer, they're going to tell you what they're looking for. You know what I mean? They hired you for a reason, maybe, because maybe they're familiar with your work and they like you, or not. Maybe you're just there and they don't know. Um, so sometimes maybe you have a little leeway if you know they like you already, you can lean into what it is that you do. But sometimes they're going to flat out tell you, "Hey, this you can hear this song. It's kind of U2-ish. So maybe come up with some delay thing like the Edge would do, some arpeggiated thing, a melodic thing. So if they tell you that, you should know. Then you got to learn how to do that quickly. You know what I mean? That's the way session works. It's about being creative and making people happy.
I suppose that's where you being a very sort of versatile player and having lots of different styles and influences is actually really useful.
It's the most useful thing when it comes to that session thing. Besides having a good attitude, having a good attitude and being a pleasant dude or lady is the most important, more important than how you play. But yeah, being able to draw from that catalog you have back here of, hey, I do know what they're talking about, or I have an idea. I've heard something like this. This makes me think of blah blah blah, and I got an idea. Yeah. So when I first moved to LA, I wasn't as diverse as I thought I was. Yes, I could solo all day long, and I loved blues and jazz and old music. But I didn't know about 80s R&B or grunge music or heavy metal, or I wasn't a a hard rock guy. I was a classic rock guy. So there were tones that I didn't understand and vibes that I hadn't spent time on. Like I tell the people a lot, if you see me play live now, often my amps of choice would be a Super Reverb and a Fender AC30 together. That's what I like, the way those amps blend together. Well, I would have never started using an AC30 or even tried one if I hadn't got asked at a session to get a Tom Petty type vibe going on. And they pulled out an AC30 because I didn't have one, or a Beatles type vibe because I hated AC30s when I was a kid. They were bright and jangly, and I didn't understand how to make them work for what I did. And then as you get older, you realize it doesn't matter if it works about what you do in your voice. It's a different voice that someone's asking you to get right now. And it was like, oh, wait a minute. I need to learn about all this. I need to learn why an AC30 is the choice of these artists in this time and this style of music. And why do I need a Rickenbacker guitar? Why do I need a Gretsch? Or why do I need this pedal or that pedal or whatever? I had to learn about all those types of things that I wouldn't have done if I wasn't thrown into the session world. I would have always just been focused on my voice. Meanwhile, it's made my voice even more singular because I've incorporated even more things into me that I wouldn't have even looked at if I hadn't gone down those roads.
Not even just the playing, is it? It's knowing how to get the different sounds as well.
100%.
So is that how you got into being a producer as well? Was it from being a session musician?
Yes and no. Yeah, I would make friends with, artists and other producers, from being there and getting hired to play guitar. And I would pick producers' brains and engineers' brains. I'm that kind of guy. Like, I want to know as much about whatever subject I'm into as I can. So, when I started to hear the difference between, you'd walk into a great studio and then the next day you'd walk into another great studio, but your guitar would sound way better at one of them than the other. And that's usually down to the engineer and what he's choosing to do to get your sound. So I start asking questions, what mics are you using there? Why does that sound so good? What's going on here? Let me see how you mic my amp. Let me see what channels you going through. Are you using EQ or not? What's going on? Because I didn't know anything about that stuff when I moved out here. Nothing, absolute zero about recording. So, I'm inquisitive and I just started to kind of pick things up. And then, as I got older, I started getting asked to do sessions remotely. It also just coincides with technology and people getting to that point where, hey, I don't have the budget to bring you to a world-class studio here in LA. Can you do it at home? And I'll pay you this much. And so then it became, all shit, I got to record somewhere at home. And then we bought our house like 12 years ago. And I thought, well, I'm going to build a studio in the back. And I did. You're looking at it. There's more to it, and it's pretty big. It's a real studio with a live room and all that. And when I kind of built that, all of a sudden, then my friends started asking me, "Hey, can I record there? Will you produce this song for me? Will you engineer and produce this for me?" And I just kind of threw myself into the fire as far as that goes. Like, I hadn't had any experience yet with like miking up drums myself, you know. So at first I would bring engineers over here and I would copy them, ones that I loved and then made relationships with. And then I just started doing it myself, like I'll figure it out. And then yeah, people just started asking me to produce. Initially it was other guitar players, people who were fans or friends who liked the way my record sounded and the things that I've done. So they would ask, and then I quickly realized how much I was enjoying doing it. Even when it was just like low budget with friends, I realized how much I enjoyed looking at the overall picture and like honing in on arrangements, sharpening arrangements, trying to make things as good as possible. the tones, the vibes, the sharpening up lyrics, even everything, like working with the artist to help convey their feelings and this, this idea that they have, this picture they want to get out, trying to make it even better than they thought they ever realized it could be, and I love it. Like I absolutely love doing it. It's become one of my favorite things.
I suppose having that understanding of engineering and production and all the technology involved also means you're able to get a better sound as a guitarist.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. When you fill up, your toolbox with what each mic sounds like and each kind of preamp style sounds like, and what's going to happen if I move this mic further away from the cone or closer to the cone, or if I have these two mics perfectly in phase or not in phase, or if I combine a dynamic and a ribbon, or if I combine a dynamic and a condenser, or if I put a condenser back here in the corner up at where my ear level is, or whatever. You only learn that stuff by doing it and hearing it and figuring it out, what this does and why this sounds like that. So absolutely, it's made me, just get better guitar tones. Of course, it's just, knowledge is power, obviously.
And makes you more hireable as well, because if you're going to another studio and there's time, and as you said, time is money, if you know what is going to work, you can literally tell them what to do.
Yes, yeah. I mean, when there's other engineers, it's the fine line of stepping on people's toes. You know, you know what you've been hired for. Although I'll never forget, I went to a session with Michael Landau when I first moved here. We're friends, and I wanted to see his session process, and he leaves nothing to chance. He even brings his own 57. It's like, no, we're not using the 57 at the studio. I'm bringing my mic pre's back then, because back then it was, he would put the mic on his amp. The mic would come into his pre, which was an Eve 1272. And then from his pre, it would go through his effects in stereo. And then he would give the engineer, here's two XLRs. I need two channels into the tape or into Pro Tools or whatever. So you had no control over his sound in any way, shape, or form. And obviously he was a legend already at that time. So when you hired him, you were agreeing to that process no matter what, you know. But it was cool to know, like, wait a minute, he knows what he's supposed to sound like and why people are hiring him. So he's taking all the variables out and just get, here you go.
And one of the most recorded guitarists in history.
History. Yeah.
It shows that mindset, doesn't it? It's going to be right.
100%. You hired him for a reason. Let you trust him.
Can we talk a little bit about your gear now?
Sure.
You've got an Ibanez signature guitar. How did that come about?
They approached me initially, which was quite an honor and exciting for, me as a little fanboy guitar player with, just like everybody else, reading guitar magazines his whole life and seeing Ibanez ads for all these legendary guitar players. Um, Basically they had started a line called the AZ line, which is already 6 years old, 7 years old now, and it was a success. It was them trying to make a less of a shredder guitar, a little bit higher end guitar with higher end materials, more versatile, for kind of an anybody guitar, kind of super stratish, but like really high end materials, roasted maple, stainless steel frets, good parts, good pickups, well set up, made in Japan for a solid price. And it was a success. So when that guitar came out, before it even came out, they called me up and asked me to come over. They have a office here in Los Angeles and a custom shop. And so I went over and they said, "Hey, we're launching this AZ line. We think it's going to do really well. We're having signature guitars with it." And they showed me my friend's signature guitars, Martin Miller and Tom Quayle. Um, and they were like, "We're launching these and a couple other signature artists. We're excited about it. If it does really well, we're going to do the AZS, which will be a single cut, telly style guitar. And if all goes the way we want, we would like you to be the first signature artist with that guitar." It ended up being me and Laurie Basilio launching that guitar together. And they have standard models and an R2 signature models. But I was, taken aback, like, really? You wanted me to do this? Because actually I was, before Laurie, I was the first one they talked to. And I ended up helping with like even picking the specs on the standard models and refining what the line was going to look like. And it was just a joy. Like, so yeah, the AZ launched and it did well. So they're like, we're gonna do this, and move ahead. And it's just been a joy. Everything about that guitar is 100% like all the things I wanted to do. There weren't any compromises on my end or anything they, pushed me into or forced me to do differently. When you pick up a flat 5-1, it's my guitar from ground up. Like everything about it, I chose purposely, and yeah, I'm super proud of it.
And what are you using for amplifiers at the moment?
Mostly still Morgan amplifiers, like I have for the last 12, 15 years, and also two Rock amplifiers. On the road with Joe, I have two Morgans and one two Rock. So I have 3 amps because I have to be really loud. He's got 7 amps. Um, and when I'm doing my own gigs, it's normally two Morgans. It's like the AC30 style one and the Super Reverb style one. Um, and then for sessions, it's my little small Morgan, the JS12 signature amp, which is more like a Princeton reverb. That's my go-to, like session studio grab and go amp. It's just foolproof as far as that goes. Yeah, so mostly Morgan and two Rock, and then if I need like for sessions specialty things, I have a room full of amps out there.
Do you have any sort of specific secret weapons when it comes to pedals?
Well, yeah, certainly. For 20 years almost, I used a pedal called the Love Pedal Chula, which was my main drive pedal, very special pedal. And a couple years ago, I replaced it with a pedal I designed with my friend Loki from Poly Effects in Australia. It's called the Flat Five pedal. It does a lot of what the Chula did. I mean, it will do exactly what the Chula did, and then a lot more. It's my secret weapon as far as drives go. It's my sound. I mean, that's the sound people associate with me and have for the last 20 years is that circuit style, um, that and some form of little slapback delay. Like that's my sound. If I get those two things, I could be happy. Reverb from the amp. Um, yeah, and then my most important pedal of the last 10, 15 years is the Eventide H9 and now the H90. And that's been even more important for sessions than it is for live, although I use it a lot live. But for sessions, it's literally invaluable. When that H9 came out, it changed my day to day session workflow because I was able to bring first an iPad and then eventually my phone once they opened it up to that to control it so I could have my iPad sitting on the music stand next to the chart. And if producer would say, hey, I think we need, a flanger type thing. Why not have a flanger dedicated on my pedal board? But I have one in there, you know what I mean? And a good one. So it's like if I need to get Andy Summers, if he just says Andy Summers to me or whatever, then I can go in the H9 and I know I've made Andy Summers type sounds in there. You know what I mean? And that pedal is, yeah, it's a jack of all trades that sounds good doing it all. And the H90 is even better. It's so much more powerful and versatile and higher quality. The converters are better in it. So those have been like, yeah, I need those. Like those, I haven't had a board without first the H9 and now the H90 since they came out.
With your session work now, is it pretty much an even split between sort of in-person sessions and online stuff?
Well, that's actually slowed down for me, the session side, mostly just because I'm too busy traveling and producing to do it. And I reached a weird point where, this is first world problems, but where I've become known enough as a soloist and as an artist that often people call me now. I don't get called as much anymore just to like, I don't know who you are. I just need a guitar player to play on my song. You know what I mean? Like I used to. So now I get called with people asking me not just to be me, but like to feature, like, hey, will you take a solo? And I want to use your name and this and that. And then things change when it becomes that, because it's like I have to actually then think about, do I want my name on this? Do I want them to be on Spotify and someone puts my name in and this comes up as me playing with this as a soloist. And also there's a different pay scale involved with that, when people want to use your name and hire you to play. So like most of the sessions I get called for now are those types of sessions where people are wanting me and not just a guitar player, not just hiring me to be a name in the back of the book and blend in. And that's great. But also like, yeah, I miss getting called just for the meat and potatoes sessions, but I'm too busy to do them. I'm just not home as much as I have been in the past, and so I haven't had the time to do it.
Do you think that the internet has had a really positive effect on the modern music industry in terms of exposure for artists?
Well, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. Of course, it has had a positive effect, but it's also, it's democratized music, and not just music, but the ability for you to get yourself out there. It's made it where anybody can find a platform and get recognized, um, which is great, but also like, oh my God, now we have a billion people releasing a song every day. And let's just be honest. I mean, most of those are absolute crap. You know what I mean? And it's fine. That's the way the world works. You know what I mean? Like, it's great that you can record a song in your basement. It doesn't mean it's going to be magic, but it does mean, hey, there's a chance that for more magic to happen, but also we have to wade through more crap to find that magic. So it's a double-edged sword. It's great to have the ability to cultivate an audience on your own without anybody's help and build up like this whole little scene of your own. Like that's what we've ended up with is all these like micro scenes where you're immediately plugged into your fan base and they can get to you and you can almost generate a living just by cultivating a group of 1,000 or 10,000 fans who are these are your fans and they're going to buy what you like and you're never going to get rich, but you're not going to go broke either. You've cultivated this thing. That's incredible that exists, but also it's made like that super success so even harder, I think, to come by, at least success that will last. You end up with, like just, I don't know, like a myriad of one hit wonders who just disappear. And it's different than the old one hit wonder because they're not making any publishing.
How do you feel also about sort of people filming your live performances and posting it online?
I'm fine with that. I'm of the mind that if I suck that night, it's my fault. You know what I mean? Like that being said, do I ever see a YouTube or a clip of myself and go, God, I wish that wasn't on the internet? Of course. That's where all have that moment. But I mean, I I'm not of the old school enough way that it bothers me. Some cats, it really bothers them. Like they'll report videos on YouTube they don't like and just get them taken down. You know what I mean? Like, and because I mean it's their music. But I don't care. Like go ahead and video to your heart's content.
I suppose it's putting you out there more, isn't it? And you might make fans through it.
Yeah, the only thing that it's changed is that bands and artists used to have the ability to use the road as a way to try new things. And like I wrote a new song yesterday. Let's experiment with it. We're gonna try it tomorrow. Oh, that didn't work. Let's change the bridge. Well, now you do it, and immediately all your fans, if they're really your fans, they may see it that next freaking day. Be like, have you heard this new song? And unfortunately, sometimes things can get cemented before they're ready to be cemented, and that's a shame that you can't fall on your face anymore. And when you do fall on your face, it was only for the couple hundred people that saw it that night, or even the 1,000 that saw it that night, or whatever. And you don't have to go wake up the next morning feeling shame, that you fell on your face because you tried something new. Whereas if it goes viral on YouTube because you fell on your face, then that's a problem.
You've also been sort of quite involved in guitar education. Is teaching something and sharing your knowledge something you also enjoy?
I enjoy it mostly in this form, like masterclass type forms, taping lessons like with True Fire and other jam tracks and other things like that. Um, I don't love one-on-one lessons. mostly because I'm so busy. So I end up doing, when I do one-on-one lessons, it's like a one-off with somebody, and most of that becomes them just asking me questions the whole time. They wanted to, they had specific things they wanted to ask me normally, and it's actually they all end up being very similar because it's like, well, I have an hour and 90 minutes. I know what they're going to ask me, and it's not really, they're all of different skill level. It's hard to do much in one lesson like that. You know what I mean? But I do like talking about music like this to a group. I like talking about improvisation. I love talking about the blues. Um, yeah, I do enjoy that. If it helps at all, even one person, come away from it with something, positive, then it was worth it.
You're very busy in terms of tour work and other sort of live performance work. Have you got any tips for aspiring musicians as to how to survive on the road?
Well, I mean, again, like I said with sessions, even the main key to being successful in this business, besides being professional, like being on time, always doing your homework, being prepared, is being someone people want to be around. Like if you're a dick, no one's going to want to be around you. And I'm sorry, I know a lot of musicians who are way better than me who, have been qualified for some of the things I've done, who didn't get the jobs because people didn't want to hire them, didn't want to deal with their attitude, didn't want to deal with their vibe, whatever it is. We all know those people. There's people we don't want to be around or don't like or don't click with or mesh with. Don't be one of those people and you'll get more work. You know what I mean? If you're professional and responsible and kind, some things take care of themselves. If you're able to keep those things the way they're supposed to be, it's like, yeah, people will always prefer to be stuck on a bus with someone they enjoy being around as opposed to a guy who sits on the front of the, front seat of the bus like this all the time and doesn't have a kind word to say and is usually complaining about everything. Man, catering fucking sucked today. That hotel sucked. But it may be the truth, but nobody wants to hear that all the time, you know?
Especially if they've been in the sucky hotel as well.
Exactly. And it's like when it comes down to it, you're getting paid to play music, and you're out there living your dream. Like it's like it could be worse. Yeah, that did suck. That hotel sucked. But let it go. Like, the vibe is more important on the bus, like and around the people you're around. And yeah, that
And have you got any sort of tips for live performance in terms of like always being able to deliver a good solo?
my biggest tip would be take a breath before you even start the solo. That's by far the most important thing you can do. Like when you're waiting, especially like if you're a sideman and you only get a solo a night or a couple solos a night, and it's like this is your moment, like, and it, and the show's been building up. Here, it could be in the first song, but it could be in the seventh, and you've been waiting the whole set, and it's like, oh, I got a solo coming up. We all know you build this anticipation, like, here comes my solo, and when you do that, there's a real danger of like like you're chomping at the bit to get that solo out. And here comes the downbeat of the solo. And the second it starts, you're giving them everything you got, which is fine too. But there's a danger of like just overdoing it and not sounding natural or musical. So I found when I was a kid, just goes back to, playing blues when I'm 12 years old and a stage full of adults and someone would be taking a solo and I knew I was going to get handed the solo next and he'd be finishing it up and I'd almost not even let them finish the last bar of their solo. I'm so ready to go and I come in playing as fast and as hard as possible. And and looking back on that, like I remember seeing a video and being like, what am I doing? I'm not saying anything. And so I started to like be cognizant of, hey, when it comes time to start your solo, maybe let the first bar go by without even playing a note. Or maybe just take a breath until the first idea then comes in, whatever the fresh idea. Instead of just instead of that going and then all of a sudden an idea comes. And then you're on your way and everything takes care of itself, of course. Take a breath, man. Take a breath when it starts because you will end up kind of on the right path that way instead of just when you come out guns a-blazing, sometimes the narrative is easy to get lost. And in an improvisation, that's what we're trying to do is write a story, from beginning to end and something that makes sense and ebbs and flows and has dynamics and just like a story does. And sometimes starting with a breath is the best thing you can do.